Hey, did you see what they just did to NotebookLM that is no longer NotebookLM? Now it's called Gemini Notebook, and they have really done a whole lot more than just change the name. I mean, yeah, that's okay. They've taken it and given some extra features. I want to show you some things most people don't know about. You're not going to hear very much about it here on YouTube or other places, but I'm going to share it with you here at Stark Raving Entrepreneurs. I'm Terry Brock, and with Gina Carr, my partner, we want to show you how to do that. I want to get right into it right now and let you know they've made some changes that you want to know about. One of the best is when you take a look at the screen itself and you see what's going on. Here we are on the screen of a brand spanking new notebook that I'm starting. Now, I'm starting just hypothetically, and I want you to notice up here at the top, you'll see copy, analytics, share, prompts, and settings. These are now all available that are there, and it's things that we couldn't do before. Now the copy is pretty nice. It's pretty simple. It just makes a copy of what you got. Nice to know that you can do that. If you say, hey, I like this particular notebook that I have, want to do it, now you've got it built right in there. It's pretty good. The analytics, that lets you know what's going on after you get a lot. I found that I haven't got much at all. Matter of fact, this is a brand spanking new one. So if I click over here and click on analytics, you'll know it shows me, okay, well, that's real good, Terry, but you haven't had anything done. So let's look at that. You see, I can come out here a little bit and it'll show you on there. It says, all right, we don't have any analytics on this right here. There's nothing to show, no activity. So that makes sense. It's a brand spanking new one, and we don't have anything available there. The share is nice, but I find that the share is okay, but it doesn't do as well because you got to have certain kind of connections with that. I haven't figured all that out yet. They've got some things on there that are, well, a little bit different than they did before. So I'm thinking, I don't know it, but the key that is really nice, really worth it right here, and I'm getting it started. I'm sharing it with you, just user to user as we're working with this. Take a look at what it is. This is the prompts, and notice this right here. It shows you the prompt that is available right next to settings, and between that and share. And on the prompts, you can put in, well, what you think it might be. Let me show you what I've got right now, which is not a whole lot up there. Now look at the prompt and it shows you, well, I've got some save prompt. Let me get out of the way here and make this a little bit easier so you can see it on video. Those of you joining us on audio are just listening to that, and that's cool. We're glad to have you there with us. But you'll see it'll give you the key benefits of it so that you can look at what's available here with the prompts. You can look at a new prompt, get your favorites or tags, all of this. I've got one in there, Business Pros working, so haven't done a whole lot with it. And that's the whole point of it. See, because what we can do right now is we can start building those prompts. This is going to come in particularly handy on NotebookLM, because when you go into the video and you go into the audio and infographics and others that are there, there's a way to do it. If you click on the option of adding more, that's a little arrow key on the side there when you're in the studio, then you get a lot more. Well, where do you get those prompts? If you got them written down somewhere else, you got to go over and get them. But here, it encourages you to get them right on the screen. So that is going to be nice. Prompts, I think, is going to be one of the best that we'll use and to work with for quite a while. It will give you the ability to use these features over here when you get over into the studio, which is right over here on the side, on the right. You see you have audio overview, video overview, you have slide deck that you can put in there. This is where prompts are going to come in and really help you a lot. Just make a note of it right now. You'll want to keep track of these. Keep track of them like we do with prompts elsewhere, but now you can do it within NotebookLM. That feature alone makes it worth the price. And well, since Gemini Notebook is free, well, that's good. But you can get the higher versions of it. It costs a little bit and it does a huge amount. I've got to tell you, as a content creator who's been creating content for, well, let's say about 44 years now, I'm off to a good start. But this is a tool that I have never seen before. A tool that does more than most will do. It's got some amazing features for it. But it gets even better when you can combine one of the Chrome extensions that's out there that is free, is going to help you enormously. Now, I got to tell you, content creator to content creator, creative conductor to creative conductor, this one blew me away because it showed me what I can do. Often you're over in YouTube, you're watching YouTube, you go, hey, that's a really good channel. I like that. I like a lot of good points there. And you're watching another one that's on the same topic. You go, oh, that's also good. They got a different point of view. She says something just a little bit different. I like her point of view versus this one over here. What you want to do is get a collection of those. So you can get 3, 4, 5, or many, many more ideas from the same place, say in YouTube. And we're looking at just YouTube alone right now. Of course, with NotebookLM, you can bring in audio only. You can bring in websites for research. You can also bring in PDFs, you can bring in all kinds of content that's there. For right now, let's limit it just to the, as we like to say, the University of YouTube, and it will give you a lot. There's a tool out there that I am using, and it's free. They've got a paid version, and I haven't seen what that is, but I think that I remember it was really, really reasonable, particularly if I get into some heavy-duty analysis. But I'm using the free version right now, and if people watch this, well, if the people watch this who are the ones creating it, thank you very much for doing that. Well, here's what it is. It's called YouTube to NotebookLM, YouTube to Gemini Notebook. That's what it is right now because they changed it to Gemini Notebook, so they got both on there. And you'll see it'll give you the capability to get a lot of information here. And like as an overview, if you look at what it'll do, it gives you the ability to send YouTube to NotebookLM videos, to save your videos, sync YouTube channels to NotebookLM, and manage any NotebookLM video early. They are working on this, and the way that they have done it is right now it is not showing you everything for the other features on there. It's showing you some, we're getting some different screens on here, having some fun with it. But with this, it's really for notebook, Gemini Notebook. And the NotebookLM is what it was before. So they haven't changed all the copy yet on here. I'm looking at this real time right now as I'm putting it together for you. But it shows you a lot of the different features that are there and how you can use this, particularly the tools, the capabilities, and why you might need it. I like this particular right here. It says you can add YouTube video to NotebookLM instantly. Literally, you just click on a video and it'll do that. You can send an entire YouTube playlist to it, extract videos from a YouTube channel to NotebookLM, we'll just say it's Notebook seamlessly, turn your video research into actionable insights, use YouTube search to Notebook to batch import search result videos. This is an amazing tool. I have been using it regularly. And let me give you an example of how we can use that. Okay, let's say you're watching some videos on YouTube and you think, hey, that's a really good video. I like that and I can use that. Let me show you exactly how you can do this. Coming over here to my favorite channel, Stark Raving Entrepreneurs. That's with Gina and me, of course. We are there and you'll see we've got this and you'll look at all the videos we have. Really good. You know, in my opinion, this is the best YouTube channel out there. Of course, that's just in my opinion, but it's good. But let's say, okay, you look at this, you go, hey, Terry did a good job on that one. Look at this one right here about GPT Live. I like that one. I think it's pretty cool. I want to see it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to click on it here. Click on it like that. I'm going to go through some of the notes that I have. You see it's really, let me pause that for a moment there, and you'll see what it's got. Gives you the ability to see the video itself in there. That's where we are. I'm on there. And what I want to do is I want to take a look at it, see what it has for me, and see the capabilities that it can do for me. But what I want to zoom in on, I have loaded this free Google Chrome extension, and it's right there on this and every other video. And look at this. Let me get in here and position this for you. You'll notice it shows you NotebookLM. NotebookLM, again, they're using the old one. They just haven't changed all that yet. Don't worry about it. But it's giving you the ability to take a look at it. You can see that. You can share it, etc. Well, watch what happens if I click on NotebookLM here and then how it handles it. I'm clicking on that. And let's see, whoops, I got to click in the right place. Clicking there on NotebookLM. Here we go. And you'll see it brings up for me the ability to see what it is. Let me position this on the screen so you can see it very clearly. You'll see right here, it's showing me that it could be a new notebook that I'm creating, or I can choose a notebook. That's very, very handy because I can take an existing notebook that I might have. I just did one recently using the same technique, looking at what lawyers are saying if you're ever pulled over. Gina and I, we don't own a car, but we do rent them, and from time to time that might happen. And so just in case we were pulled over, I want to do everything legally, say what's right, and know the right words. So lawyers have put out a lot of videos on YouTube on what to do. Well, what I did is I went back and grabbed several of them, like 4 of them, that I thought were particularly good lawyers, and what they said, there was a little bit of repetition, that's okay, and sometimes they'd have a little bit different angle. I selected each of them, I created that notebook, and then I added it to the notebook that is existing. So let me show you how we can make that happen. So you'll see here I am, I'm on the place right now here in YouTube, and you'll see over here we've got create a new notebook or choose notebook. I'm going to create a new one, so I'm going to click here on create a new one. Obviously, if it was one that existed, you would click on that and just pop it into one that's already there. Click on create a new notebook, and when I do that, watch what happens. It adds sources, it bounces over here, and it gives me a whole new page on ChatGPT, or not ChatGPT. Hey, I've been working with a lot of tools here with NotebookLM, and it shows me NotebookLM here, and it has one source over here on the left side. See, it says stop asking ChatGPT for answers. Well, this is the video that came over there. It gives me a nice summation right here where I can look at it and says, okay, the prompt does this, etc., etc., and it shows me over here all the possibilities that I have. Well, watch what we can do with this thing. I used that Chrome extension of now called Gemini YouTube to Gemini Notebook. Put that in there, just clicked on it, and it gave me this. But look at what it gave me. Not only did I get the video, I'm going to click on that video, and look at this. It gave me the transcript of it. So now I can look at the transcript. I see the whole thing here along with the video itself all the way through. This gives me a huge amount of potential. Think about how easy that is. The ease of use you have, putting that in there, making it work, and then adding it to an existing notebook so you can get all of those different features and then create a separate audio, create separate video that you can do in NotebookLM, create a separate infographic. Yeah, I'm going to tell you more about infographics and how do you get some of those. You could get a slideshow, a slide deck. So what I've done, and what you might want to do as well, take those videos that you have created and be able to take a look at them, see how it is, and see what's going on with it, and be able to say, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to look at how these all work. So the real advantage of this is you're going to be able to create a lot of different videos of your own and then put a compilation of them together and give those to people to say, this is what I talk about, or what I say about this particular topic or that topic. You want to do some research on what others are doing, like I did with the lawyers. I am not a lawyer, and I want to hear what they have to say, particularly those 4 lawyers that I saw. I thought each of them pretty good in their own right, really good. Well, I just clicked and got theirs and then got a compilation of what needs to be done. Now, what I'll do in reality is I'll be able to get all of those into a report, which is available on Studio. Get that report. Now I have it printed out what to say. Have that standing by. You're ever pulled over, you reach over, you say, excuse me, officer, may I reach something over here? You get it, and then you read that to them, what it says under the law that you can do. Check with your own attorney. I'm not giving any legal advice here. I'm just saying something you could do. But think about getting other features that you could use when you want to learn about what's happening, let's say in advertising on YouTube. What's working now? What is not working with the algorithm in LinkedIn? And what is working right now? There's a lot of videos like that on YouTube that you can get. You just click those buttons and you've got it for free. Come on, this is phenomenal. And I want to show you one more thing that we can do with this. One of the greatest things I love about Notebook is the capability that it has to create infographics, and does it really well. Now, the real sparkle in that comes when you can design your own prompt. You get the right kind of infographic from the templates that they have available. And they got some really good ones. I'm going to show you how to find out what is best for you. And then you can create your own prompt. And remember what we talked about initially? Designing prompts. Now you can do that. Well, let's take a look at it, what it is. I got a keynote slide presentation here that I put together for you. Let you see what it is, the power of infographics with Gemini Notebook. And if you got questions on that, so you want to find out a little bit more, bounce over and see us there at starkravingentrepreneurs.com. Love to hear from you on that. But I want to show you what's available. Now look at this. You're going to love this right here. One of the kinds you can use is called Professional. And what is it? Well, the Professional does this kind of style. I'm not going to go through all the stuff that it has here, but show you a little bit about it right now. When you look at what it is, it's a clean corporate infographic with flat chevrons, linked steps, connection points, and polished branding. So something like this is what it will create. This way you can look at it and say, okay, I kind of like that. And it's best used for, well, it's used for business presentations, strategy decks. You can use it for sales, enablement, client communication, and executive training. This is real good for my fellow professional speakers that are out there. This is one you'll probably want to use a lot. I've used it a lot and have been very pleased with it. Really has some nice features to it. Let's look at another one here. Now this one, kind of nice over here. That one right here, it's called Kauai. And you'll see it's kind of colorful, gives some nice graphics. It's good for that, but this is good if you want a more playful touch like that. What it is, well, it's a cute pastel visual language with rounded shapes, smiling elements, and a gentle, cheerful tone. Where is it used best? Well, probably a light lifestyle content, wellness, beginner guide, social post, and audience-friendly micro learning. Very nice for that. I think it's got some nice features. Here's one I particularly like a lot. It's called Anime. It's got some nice graphics there, the Japanese style that lets you see what's going on with things like, okay, our revenue was out here, our top channels were here, and our top product is this right here, et cetera, et cetera. This is really good. It's a good dynamic infographic with speed lines, burst bubbles, and action framing, bold, emotional emphasis. Really good for those kind of things. And here's where they say it's good to use for high energy announcements, launching our new product. Oh yeah, the launches are good. Transformations. Look what has changed on this one, etc. Contrast and attention grabbing social content. So all of these have some different kinds of uses, and you'll want to take a look at what each one does and how they do it. Now here's one that I think you're going to like a lot. It's called Claymation. Claymation gives you the ability for nice, very vivid graphics and color. What it is, well, it's a soft, tactile style with rounded forms, radial gradients, realistic drop shadow depth, and down here, friendly brand content, simple explainers, onboarding, kids-safe concepts, and approachable messaging. All that very nice. So these are available, and they're available in a PDF that you'll be able to get when you look at some of the features that are in the description. We'll show you how you can get hold of that. And with bricks, here's some, I like this, it shows a logical building one on top of another. I won't go through all of this here on the video, but you get the idea, and then you can go through it on your own when it's going to be very helpful. All these, very good. Bricks is good. Here's one I use extensively, and you might want to also, Storyboard. Giving you the ability to say, here's where we are, here's what happened, we saw this challenge, we dealt with it this way, we might have had these challenges, but now here's what we've got for you. Something like that is a real good tale to tell with that. And here's one that you'll use probably often in business presentations called the Editorial. Editorial gives you the ability to say, here's what's going on, how we're doing it, what's happening, here's a story that we have, here's another story, and a quote that you might pull from it, something like that that can be real good. Best used for thought leadership, executive summaries, magazine style explainers, and premium brand storytelling. All of that real good for that. The Editorial is good. And here's one I particularly like. It's called Sketchnote. Look at this stuff. Kind of puts it in there in a little bit different style, like big ideas. I'm going to start small, or here's your process that you'll use. See, it puts all these in here. And here's one I like. Great ideas come from connecting the dots. Okay, fine like that. But you know, here's the real secret. What you want to do, knowing that it's going to take those little tidbits, where does it get it? It gets it from what you put in there. When you're presenting writing, make sure you put those tidbits in there and then feed it into Notebook, and you'll find that Notebook can come back selecting that particular style. Select the Sketchnote, that is, Sketchnote style of infographic, and be amazed. Yes, indeed. You can thank me later, and here's how you do it. Once you take a drink of your choice, whatever it is, and just raise it and say, here's to you, Terry. Thank you. So you'll be able to thank me for that. Have some fun with it, but take a look at this. I think is nothing short of brilliant, what they've got there. And I like the idea, and they say here, it's really good for brainstorming, teaching concepts, workshop recaps, personal insights, and idea mapping. So these are some, I just want you to know what these can do for you. Now here's one that's good, scientific. Whoa, Nelly, it gets real deep and kind of hard to read here a little bit. It'll do more than just this one style, but take a look at that. This is good for technical infographics using coordinated meshes, concentric rings, data callouts, and blueprint style precision. Okay, whatever that means. Scientists and engineers will know that. Gives you good research summaries, AI workflows, engineering concepts, medical explainers, and systems thinking. For those that need that, knock yourself out and have a good time. Here's one I like as well, Bento Grid. What it is, well, this one is a structured infographic that's built with rounded rectangular modules. This is one you can use a lot. They're arranged in a clean, flexible grid. Best used for dashboards, product overview, that would be nice, feature comparisons, KPI summaries, and modular selling. Notice all the stuff they have here for this. Really good on how it covers all of that real well. So you want to get to know these. Find out which one is going to be right for you. Whichever one, there's 10 of them out there that I just showed you. You'll be able to take those, find out how they work and what can be done for you in a really nice way and help with that. So come get to know that and come over and visit us. Come over and see Gina and I over at Stark Raving Entrepreneurs. We've got some easy to understand and implement business ideas. We want to leverage the power of AI for you with tools like ChatGPT, Gamma, Gemini Notebook like we're showing here, and many others. So come on over there and take a look and see us. And in addition to that, remember, these are just a few of what you can do in Gemini Notebook, formerly NotebookLM. Now it's Gemini Notebook, and boy, they have done a really good job of that, in my opinion. Let me know what you think. Drop me a note. Really love to hear from you in the comments below, wherever you're catching this, and help you. And we've got another video that you're going to like. It's going to show you how you can use some other features of NotebookLM, putting it together when it was called NotebookLM. You'll be able to do that right over here. I'm Terry Brock. Really looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for joining me today.